It's a very complex situation. It's a shame, but it is what it is. Because it's America first to me. It's all about America first. We're not going to give up hundreds of billions of dollars in orders and let Russia, China, and everybody else have them. The CIA has looked at it. They've studied it a lot. They have nothing definitive. And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. We are with Saudi Arabia. We're staying with Saudi Arabia.
It was stunning then. It's even more stunning today. The ex-president let Saudi Arabia and its leader, Mohammed bin Salman, off the hook. And now, 2.5 years later, there's new reporting, a twist, if you will, surrounding the brutal murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The New York Times cites documents and people familiar with the matter in reporting that 4 of the Saudis who took part in that operation back in 2018 received paramilitary training in the United States the year prior under a contract approved by Trump's State Department. The training was conducted by an Arkansas-based security contractor called Tier 1 Group. A senior exec from their parent company maintains the training was primarily defensive in nature and unrelated to their subsequent heinous acts. As for the Trump administration's role, the Times writes this, quote, "There's no evidence that the American officials who approved the training or Tier 1 Group executives knew that the Saudis were involved in the crackdown inside Saudi Arabia. But the fact that the government approved high-level military training for operatives who went on to carry out the grisly killing of a journalist shows how intensely intertwined the U.S. has become with an autocratic nation, even as its agents committed horrific human rights abuses." Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, a member of the Intelligence Committee, and Mark Mazzetti, New York Times Washington investigative correspondent. His byline is on that stunning piece of reporting. Mark Mazzetti, tell us more about what they thought they were training them to do, because I think the aims and the governing style of MBS was pretty clear, no?
Yeah, well, the contract, Nicole, goes back some years we've dated it as far back as 2014, of course, during the Obama administration and during a different time in Saudi politics. The training was supposed to be for the Saudi royal guard to protect senior royals, the crown prince, the deputy crown prince. Some of it was defensive in nature, again, sort of more bodyguard protection. Over time, however, over the years, things change in Saudi Arabia. Mohammed bin Salman takes power in 2017 as crown prince, and he turns this group, or parts of this group, into much more of an element to crush dissent in the kingdom, to really go after his enemies. And that's why this starts around 2017. And this is the time when those people who went through the training, some of the people who went through the training, ended up being part of these missions, including the one to kill Khashoggi. So it's sort of a tale of what happens when you, allow this training without much oversight about who gets it, and some of the real repercussions of that.
You know, Congressman Himes, what questions do you have about what is sort of the elephant in the room? What is adjacent to this is Donald Trump's dogged defenses of MBS, even as his own intelligence community was briefing him about MBS's role in Khashoggi's killing.
Yeah, it gives me a little bit of PTSD, Nicole, to see the ex-president doing what he did on a number of occasions, which is simply dismissing the very good work of the intelligence community. And what Donald Trump always missed, which is actually the key ingredient to figuring out how to do this right. And it's not just training bodyguards. It's who do we sell weaponry to? Where do we send military trainers? It's a really big issue because all of this stuff, in national security circles, it's called dual use. Things don't split into perfect boxes of defensive and offensive. So we need to be very careful. And what Donald Trump always missed over his presidency, that one of the core American strengths, if you want to be American first, that's great. But one of the core, maybe the core American strength is that we care about values. People like us because they know that we care about values. And look, I get it. We work with Saudi Arabia on things like counterterrorism. We like their energy, et cetera. That's fine. We have a complicated relationship with China, too. But when you start talking about providing training or equipment or advice that can be used lethally, you better ask yourself a really hard question of whether you can be sure that the people that you're providing that stuff to share the underlying values that we do. Because if not, you can end up with stories like Mr. Mazzetti's very, very well-researched story.
So, Mark, speak to that. When did we start outsourcing paramilitary training to private equity-backed private firms?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, some of this training of foreign forces, allied forces, partner forces has happened for a number of years. But as we point out in the story, these firms, a lot of which have popped up in the 20 years since 9/11, have in recent years seen less business from the American military because there is a gradual pulling back of deployments overseas. So they've gone looking for business, and they've gone looking for business with foreign countries who are eager to have this kind of training. A lot of it is done by former special operations, former Navy SEALs, former intelligence operatives, and so countries want to pay for this. And the the State Department provides licenses for that training. So what we say that this is a little bit of a glimpse of the future as well, because these companies are still seeking out business overseas from these partners, and it's unclear whether the vetting, the oversight has gotten any better.
Congressman, do you want to get a handle on how many contracts like this are out there and whether there are currently contracts to train other elite Saudi teams, whether they were a part of this mission that murdered and brutally dismembered Jamal Khashoggi? Or, I mean, do you want to know how much of this is going on right now?
Sure, of course we do, right? I mean, Congress is charged with oversight, and there is a lot of this that goes on right now. We haven't used the word that was, front page many, many years ago, and that word is Blackwater. You asked, how many outsourced contracts are being given. Remember Blackwater, Eric Prince's company? They had to change their name because of the abhorrent massacre that a U.S. contractor committed in Iraq. Again, this is not a new problem, and believe me, it's not. If you think back on what Blackwater did, it's not just the killing of one individual. So the answer obviously is that it's not good enough to say, hey, we like the Saudis or we like these people. You really have to do some hard work to say, are the values consistent with our values? And it's not just with people like the Saudis, right? I mean, Turkey, right? We sold our most advanced fighter jets to Turkey, F-35 jet airplanes, and they turn around and buy Russian state-of-the-art anti-aircraft stuff. So this is not sexy work, but inside the State Department, inside the Department of Defense, and yes, inside the intelligence community, because remember, our intelligence people are in partnership with intelligence people in some pretty unsavory places. All of this stuff has to be subject to really specific oversight.
Congressman, I'm going to ask you to stick around. I want to ask you about some other big stories of the day. Mark Mazzetti, it's great to have you on this program. It's great to spend some time on this extraordinary piece of reporting.